Hi, this is still Mark here. So we're going to be continuing this this series with some questions about Cube. So I'm going to be going in and interviewing Miles and related to how his Cube started, Cube origins. Alright guys, so we're back to talk about Cube origins in this case this week. Miles is one of the first people that I know of to have made a Cube, and we're going to go into how he started that and how you can start your own if you'd be looking to it. So one of the first questions I wanted to ask you, Milo, is when did you start your Cube?
2003, Scourge had come out. The reason why I built it was actually because Scourge had come out, and I was playing Standard. It was the first time I was playing Standard at the time, and I noticed that all my cards were going to rotate.
Okay.
Out, and I was like, this sucks. This is the worst. Why does anybody want to play a format where the cards rotate out? That means like my entire investment is gone. So I traded my Standard deck in for a bunch of cards for a Cube.
Okay. And so what made you do it in the first place?
So I didn't know what a Cube was like initially, but I was on MTG Ontario and the forums there, and I was just like reading forums and, you know, participating, trolling, you know, the general forum stuff that one does. And I saw that somebody was writing a tournament report for a private Cube tournament, and it was this guy Marc Zadner.
Okay.
Do you know Marc Zadner?
I've met him, yes.
He held a annual Cube tournament. It was like his second year doing it, and there was like a bunch of like local good players that I knew of at the event. I was like, who are like, what is this tournament that all these amazing players that are in my community are playing in? And it was a Cube, and it sounded like the most fun ever. It was like a play-by-play of each round. Like they'd have a feature match, and one person would write it. So like sometimes it was like Rich Hohen writing the review, or like sometimes it was Josh Ryder, sometimes it was Marc Zadner, and they'd be doing the feature match of two of the other players playing. And it just drew me in immediately. So I started going through all my cards, because I had been playing casually since Revised.
Right.
So I like pulled out the Balances and the Armageddons and Brothers of Fire and like everything, and I just put them all in penny sleeves and I shuffled them up, and I called my friends over to get together and play this Cube that I built.
I'm not sure how much, you know, back in the day when you and I started meeting each other, we went to this local gaming store, and they had a Cube that they built for the store shortly after we found out what it was. Was that before or after you'd set up your Cube?
You know what, it was, I had a Cube at that time, because I remember thinking like, I think that they had set it up before I had my Cube, but when I found out about their Cube, I had already had one.
Okay.
They did things a little differently though. What they did was they had just a collection of cards that they didn't need, and they would leave on the radiator. And then they would, since they didn't want to spend money to draft 3 packs, they would buy 1 pack each, and then draft the other 2 packs off radiator cards.
Yeah, but that's how it evolved a bit since then. But yeah. There's a lot of in the old Wild West that things that probably not done quite the same today.
Yeah.
But,
although Radiator Cube should be a thing, and people should be playing Radiator Cube all over the place.
With your $300 Tarmogoyfs. And
you know what? There was, at the time, I remember they were like, oh yeah, and if you need any cards from the Radiator for like constructed, you could just take them. And it was the first time I was there, and I remember it was maybe like Ibrahim and myself came from 401 to Excalibur, and we went through it, and it was just like stacks of wild mongrels and psychotogs, and those at the time were going for like $2 or $3 each at 401. So we're like, take them all, put them in the binders, like screw these guys in their Cube, and then we became friends with you guys. I'm sorry I took your wild mongrels.
No, if that's what it took to draw you in, then you know, all the better.
But yeah, that's the Cube origin stories.
Yeah, so it's been I guess about 11 or 12 years now that you've had your Cube.
Yeah.
So looking back, how often do you use it now?
You know what? It's embarrassing. I don't use it enough because I use it for the events, obviously, that everybody sees on YouTube, the Holiday Cube Draft and the Cube Championship.
Yep.
But I don't actually get to Cube that much outside of that. I almost never play cube outside of that. Also because I don't want to bring my cube to a store. There's a lot of expensive cards in it,
Right.
and if I cube with random people, cards go missing. And I mean, it's happened before to me. It's something that I don't really want to do. What we're working on is a cube that's a replica of my cube. That's just the simplest version of a proxy, just a photocopied piece of paper in front of a basic land or common, sleeved up, and so I can play at stores and get more practice in.
Well, is that something?
Because
So is that
I
something
need
you're
to be
looking
able
to
to
do
beat
more?
you eventually. Is what I'm saying.
So are you looking to cube more? Do you regret not being able to use them more often?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember this. You probably do. We used to cube every day.
Yeah.
At a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And you know, being able to do that was great. You know, cubing every day was awesome. But you know,
That was our full-time employment.
things have obviously changed. It's not possible to do that anymore. But
Yeah. Okay. And so, how would you describe your cube now?
My cube is, you know what, it's interesting because when I just built my cube, this question didn't exist, right? Like, a cube was singleton best of Magic,
Yeah.
right? That's all a cube was, and that's actually kind of what my cube is. Normally people ask me to describe it now, I say that it's a best of list of the history of Magic, it's eternal, but there's no power or mode or time vault. So that's usually what I say, but now there's all these different cubes. There's themed cubes, there's popper cubes,
Yeah.
there's cubes that break the singleton rule altogether, and there's actually so many of those cubes now that exist that I'm surprised by. But people seem to have fun, and I think that's what cube should be. Whatever you and your friends have fun playing, that's the cube you should build.
I've seen one of Lucas Siao's cube actually is all combo cube, so all the cards are designed to funnel one or another type of combo, and it's quite interesting. But yeah,
one of the cubes that I've seen a lot of, and people keep asking me to look at or review, or why don't I build a cube that's like it, is Justin Parnell's cube.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it, but he does a lot of cube-related articles on Channel Fireball, and he's kind of like they're like cube master. He's like you for Channel Fireball, but he breaks the singleton rule a lot. In fact, he's got like 5 or 6 step links in the cube, and he has multiple brainstorms taking the place of preordain and ponder, because he says, and then 2 of each fetch line.
Okay.
So that it can power brainstorms and step links. And he says that those cards, like step links and brainstorm, are just so much more powerful than things like Elite Vanguard or Savannah Alliance or Preordained Ponder.
Right.
And they're more skill testing. But I think that part of what I love about Cube is its inconsistency. Like, the fact that it feels like a limited environment, that you can't just sit down and be like, I'm gonna draft a bunch of step links and fetch lands today.
Yeah.
Like you don't always have that choice. You shouldn't always know exactly what you're going to open in Cube. You should have to roll with the punches and build with what you open. That's my opinion. Also, I think that it limits yourself when you only have cards like Brainstorm instead of Preordain or Ponder, because in some situations what you want is a Preordain. You don't want a Brainstorm.
Yeah.
You don't have the fetch lands in the deck because, you know, there's only one of each in the cube, and instead you want to be able to bury some cards, you know. If you have an active Jace on the board, right, and you're against a huge threat, or a series of threats on the other side of the table, you want to be able to brainstorm with Jace and preordain to put 2 of those cards on the bottom, right?
Right. And so, in terms of the way your cube's designed, do you have any sort of vision in terms of how the games are going to play out, or, you know, is there any... have you ever found that aggro is too powerful or not powerful enough?
Yeah.
Is there any thought that goes into sort of how the games are going to play out in your cube?
Yes, yeah. There is for sure. And it goes based on the sets that are released. For a long time, aggro wasn't good enough. And one of the ways we fixed that was we made aggro more consistent by putting functionally duplicated cards.
Redundancy, I guess.
Yeah, redundancy. Like, I didn't have Elite Vanguards in the cube for a very long time because I was like, Savannah Alliance is the same card, and we have that. But then the arguments were, aggro's not good enough, and it's because you need more 2-1s for 1. Since the last, like, 3 sets, they've printed a ton of 2-1s for 1, so it's solved that problem, and we don't need to do that. Elite Vanguard's still in my cube, but it's definitely one of the cards that's going to go very soon.
Sometimes even better than 2-1s for 1 in a lot of
Oh well, absolutely. Soldier of the Pantheon's strictly better than any other version of, you know, any other 2-1-for-1 in white. And black keeps producing more and more interesting 2-1s-for-1.
Your Bloodsoaked Champion, one of the recent ones, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Bloodsoaked Champion, Gnarled Scarhide, Gravecrawler. They all do very different things. Tormented Hero, which is probably the weakest one. But they all do very different things, and they have their own drawbacks. So it's great. It's way better than just a bunch of, you know... what's his name? Carnophage.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, you'd play like maybe a bunch of Carnophages if you were going by that mantra of breaking the Highlander attribute of cube. Or I have no idea, like characteristic of cube, the fact that it's Highlander.
No, I understand what you're saying there, and so you know, your cube's on Cube Tutor, and one of the things on Cube Tutor you can sort is by cube size. There's a lot of different. You see the 300s, the 500s, the 700s. How did you settle on the size of your cube?
Okay, I used to have a really big cube, and then it didn't fit in the box anymore, so I cut it down. The actual reason though is because I had a big cube, and then people weren't seeing the fun stuff often enough.
Right.
This was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And what I did was I went through the list, and I got really harsh, and I cut a bunch of cards. Like, I just completely streamlined it. So a bunch of cards that people were like, even if they loved it, I would be like, cut it, cut it, cut it. And we cut it all the way down to 50 per color. And then slowly, as more cards were released, and there'd be like maybe a white, a blue, and a green card that I really liked and wanted to add, I'd add the red card and the black card that was cut from the cube.
The most powerful cut.
To balance it. And I think that that's probably a pretty decent way to go if you feel like your cube is getting full with a bunch of garbage that nobody's playing.
Right.
Or like a bunch of cards that you wanted to test, but then you just haven't ended up cutting.
So that kind of leads well into the next question is how often do you update your cube? I know that you're pretty on top of the newest sets, and so it's got to be, you know, at least every 3 months. Is it more than that? Is it less?
Yeah. So like I used to, like, there were years where I never updated the cube. And
Kamigawa block.
Yeah, Kamigawa block, original Ravnica block. I wasn't playing Magic, so I didn't pick up any of the cards. Like, it wasn't until recently that Remand was actually in my cube, just because I didn't own one. And
it's actually not a cheap card now.
No, I know, exactly. And now every time a new set comes out, since I'm playing Magic actively, I pick up additional cards for cube. A lot of the time, there will be cards that aren't in my cube because they're in my standard deck. And I'll be like, I need it for standard right now, and I don't want to pick up a 5th copy of that card because I know it's going to be worth 25 cents once it rotates. Yeah. Because I learned my lesson at the rotation in Onslaught block.
There's a recurring theme here. It doesn't give up any value.
Yeah, you don't. As a Magic player, I feel like that's a thing that all of us share, that we don't want to give up value in game or out of game. It's just like, I need my 2-for-1s all the time.
Okay, and so what would be your criteria for adding or removing a card from your cube?
Okay, so when I see a new card, I'm like, what card in cube can you compare this to the most? If that card is strictly better than that card, then it should probably just replace it, unless it's in one of those drop slots where you have a bunch of like dirtily cards that nobody ever picks. Otherwise, if it's something that hasn't been seen before, or it does something completely new, then you would probably want to just throw it in the cube and then see how it does. Like, one of the things that I did that with recently is Herald of Anafenza. Like, it was a card that I felt like I didn't see anything that does that. Like, it's a 1-drop, but it's not an aggressive 1-drop. It's like a control 1-drop. Yeah. And so I didn't know if that was going to be good enough or not. It turns out it wasn't good enough. But it's in my cube because I wanted to try it. I wanted to give it a shot, right? And I think that that's fair.
So you're a big fan of giving cards trials then? So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how are you going to know if it's good enough or not, right?
So there must be a lot of cards you go through then that make it in and out? Because obviously there's a lot of cards to try.
There is. The best way that you can do this is play cube. Unfortunately, I don't do that enough. But if you're watching this and you want to try out new cards, I highly recommend putting a bunch in, see how they do, and then cut the ones that aren't good when the next set comes out.
Okay. So a while ago, you had mentioned to me privately that a lot of cards in your cube have sentimental value, whether that's because they're signed by somebody or donated by somebody, or you made one crazy play one time that was really good.
Yeah.
Does that have any effect on whether or not you leave it in the cube? Is there anything that's in there that's maybe shouldn't be, or tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, well, I told you that privately, so. If we could just get to that. No, I mean, that happens. There's one card in particular that I know for sure you're talking about. But, like, for a long time I had Desolation Angel in my cube and nobody else did. Because there was one player who loved it and would always be like, I want to beat you with Desolation Angel, right? Like, I'll take Desolation Angel over Sorry. I don't care. I want to beat you with Desolation Angel. And there's something to that. Most of the time I would just cut the card if it's not good enough.
Okay.
And I mean, that's obviously what I'd recommend to all of you, because you're going to ultimately have more fun where everybody has a competitive deck and they all have a chance of winning. However, I do have a couple cards in my cube that have sentimental value. One of which is Jocklops. It's not good enough. It shouldn't be in the cube. I'll be the first to admit that. And maybe one day I will cut it. But it's one of those, like, it's the only card that wraths and destroys all the lands that's in the cube still. So I think that with added Planeswalkers, added exciting Planeswalkers, you could play Planeswalker and then Jocklops and then proceed to win the game. Ugin Jocklops, come on guys, don't you want to see that happen? Karn Jocklops, let's do it.
Yeah, what do you mean by the only card that like you have Catastrophe and Armageddon and...
Yeah, but a single card that's going to wrath the board and destroy all the lands at the same time. Yeah.
I see what you mean. And so I found one thing in my cube was that in terms of sentimental value and other players playing them, and you said the one guy wanted to play with Desolation Angel.
Yeah.
There's kind of two categories of cards within that. One of them is the cards that other people play all the time that aren't good enough, and then I find there's actually another subset of cards in my cube specifically that some people play and are really good against me. Just I can't use them. Did you find that at all? There's, like, one of the examples I give is Masticore. I can't stand playing with Masticore. You have to discard a card every turn, but there's people in my play group that play it all the time, and it destroys me.
I agree with you about Masticore specifically. I cannot play it. I'm not going to touch Masticore. I'm not interested in playing Masticore. But again, people like my friend Adrian, and Marc Raska.
Yeah,
they're crushing with Masticore. I don't know how they do it.
They just drop it, and I look at the board, and I'm like, I can't win anymore.
But it stays. It has to stay for that reason, right? Just because I don't like a card or because it's not good for me. If the players in the group like the card, it should stay. A couple other cards like that for me are Triskelion. Is a card that I will never play. I will not touch that card. But people play it and they really like it. It's good for certain combos, and hey, if they want to go with that, then let them. It's not busted by any means.
No.
So there's no reason to stop it because it's oppressive. And if people are playing it and they like it and they're winning with it, then there should be no reason to cut it. Another card that I feel that way about is Cultivate. It doesn't crush me, obviously. It's not a card that crushes anybody, but it's not a card I would probably ever play. I'm not that interested in playing a Cultivate. I don't think it's enough bang for your buck. But
so, interesting question there. Just to keep things rolling here. Let's say Adrian and Marc Raska were to move to Japan. Would those cards still, they've been proven to be good enough in the right person's hand? Would they stay in the cube, or do you think they'd be?
I think that after a certain number of times you see it last picked, you got to take it out. You got to try something new. And then maybe in a few years, if the power creep hasn't just completely surpassed it, you might want to try it again. Maybe it combos with some other cards. Maybe it's a little bit better now than it used to be. Keep it in I heard once I read an article, I think, about a guy who had a cube, and he also had a binder to go with the cube of all the cards that he cut from the cube, or all the cards that he could possibly add if certain new cards were printed.
Yeah, I have a little stack at the back of mine as well of cards like I'm cutting, but I'm not sure about. They might make it back in, they might not. So yeah, I can understand that.
All of the foils that I had that used to be in the cube, I can't bring myself to trade for $1. Like this card was like a $25 foil when it came out. Now it's worth like 50 cents.
Yeah.
But those are the ones that are hard for me to get rid of. So I just put them in the binder anyway. Maybe one day they'll come back in. So that's all we have for this week. If you want to let us know how you built your cube, or if you have any pointers for other people who are building their cubes or just getting started into cube, let us know in the comments section. For Mark, I'm Milo. Thanks for watching.
See you next week.
It was better than Thassa.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No, I tried it out. I kept forgetting to describe.
Well, then it sucks.
This is terrible. Doing a blue. Forget about this.
You told me to record, so this is recording you eating almonds.
No, collect. We need this.
This is important.
All right.
Alright, let's see.